2023 is over, and I thought it was a really solid year of movies, and I've made a video going more in depth on my top 10 favorites, but I also wanted to make something where I discuss everything I saw this year. And then I saw Jack in the Books make a video on everything he watched, giving one sentence reviews, and I thought, I'll just steal that idea. So a link to his video is in the description below, but let's get into it. These are my one sentence thoughts on every single movie and some TV shows that I saw this year. Andrew Callahan's This Place Rules. It's entertaining and insightful in the moment, but in hindsight, yeesh. The Many Saints of Newark, there's some charm seeing the boys again, but overall it felt like a pretty big missed opportunity. White Noise, Noah Baumbach took some big swings and mostly missed, but I appreciate the effort and the money on screen nonetheless. Megan, it's fine, but it should have and could have been much campier and gorier. St. Omer is minimalist filmmaking that really props up the script and the actors to really powerful effect. The Whale, I cried at the end from laughing so hard. Decision to Leave, Park Chan-wook is an absolute master of his craft, and we're all lucky to have him making movies. Plane, Gerard Butler is an absolute master of his craft, and we're all lucky to have him making movies. Paddington, how can you not find this little guy delightful? All Quiet on the Western Front, it's brutal, horrific, and beautiful, and for me, an instant addition to the list of all-time great war movie classics. Missing, I think both this and Searching are really fun, tight, ingenious little mystery thrillers, and I'd watch many more of them. Sick, the heroes are obnoxious anti-vax, anti-mask teens, and the villains are responsible adults who adhere to CDC guidelines. I would have expected the writer of Scream to lean into the satire of this a little more. Paul T. Goldman is one of the most unique and entertaining pieces of media I've seen all year. Paul T. Goldman is either our king or should be locked up in prison forever. You People is a few funny but dated jokes stretched out to an excruciating 2-hour runtime. Babylon, I don't care how hard this movie starts to fall off in the end, it's still got some of my absolute favorite sequences from movies in the past few years. Infinity Pool, Mia Goth gives one of the most unhinged performances of the year, and we should all be examining why we can't open up the Oscars to performances like this. Knock at the Cabin is a whiff from M. Night Shyamalan that surprisingly suffers from a lack of a twist. Pathan is a lot of fun, but also maybe a little too frenetic and cartoony for me. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, hopefully a harbinger for the end of this type of terrible CGI abomination of a movie. Sharper is a bad twisty thriller, but it's got Julianne Moore and John Lithgow participating in those twists, so it's not all bad. In the Mood for Love is an all-time classic love story about two people who can't allow themselves to fall in love. It's just as powerful in the moments that don't happen as the ones that do. Cocaine Bear, it lived up to its name. Women Talking, I agree with whatever critics group it was that awarded this and Jackass Forever Best Ensemble. Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre. It's like if David Ayer directed a ChatGPT version of a Guy Ritchie script. Creed 3, Jonathan Majors completely dominates this movie, which is unfortunately not as big of a compliment now as it was when the movie was released. Scream 6, sure the killer reveal is kinda lame and convoluted, but isn't that kind of the price of admission for a lot of Scream movies these days? It's still a lot of fun. Goodfellas is a career-defining work from one of our greatest living directors. John Wick Chapter 4, some of the most beautiful action sequences in the history of American cinema. Tetris, none of the pieces fit together for me in this one, it's a big L-shaped block. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, it's a fun romp, and why don't they make more fun romps? Ambulance, 90s level Bayhem with Jake Gyllenhaal bringing 90s level Nicolas Cage unhinged. The Super Mario Bros. Movie, completely devoid of substance or creativity underneath its admittedly fun nostalgia bait. Beef tops itself every episode, which is no small feat in a show this good. Rye Lane, if you miss classic romantic comedies, this is the movie you've been looking for. 1001, Teyana Taylor gives one of the best and most overlooked performances of the year. Sunshine, one of the greatest space movies of all time, and don't trust the haters, the last act still slaps. How to Blow Up a Pipeline, a great tension-filled little indie eco-thriller. Beau is Afraid is a mix of my absolute favorite movie scenes of the year with some of the most confounding anti-audience imagery I've seen in a while. John Mulaney's Baby J is still funny, but I'm not sure John Mulaney's typical sarcasm works as well when he's talking about his relapse and recovery. Sisu is an excellent premise, okay action. Evil Dead Rise, you couldn't possibly say they didn't deliver on the blood. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, a hugely satisfying ending to Marvel's greatest series. Fool's Paradise, the worst possible movie experience for a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Blackberry, the best possible experience if you're a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Philadelphia. The Covenant, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Jake Gyllenhaal is no Gerard Butler. Fast X, one of my favorite guilty pleasure series, got a flat tire. Deadwood the movie, I love the original series so much, but please cut out all of the flashbacks from this movie. The Death of Stalin, genius satire and all too relevant. Across the Spider-Verse, a beautiful and exhilarating unfinished story, and if I could add a second sentence, kinda don't like what they did with Peter B. Parker here. The Flash, one of the ugliest movies I've ever seen. Asteroid City, despite its multiple framing devices, it feels like one of Wes Anderson's most straightforward, earnest, and moving films to date. Extraction 2, action scene go long, and that make good, right? John Early, now more than ever, one of my favorite comedic performers, putting on a really fun one-man show that I think literally only he could pull off. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, a literal perfect start to my all-time favorite franchise. Past Lives, Celine's song walks an impossible narrative tightrope of making the audience yearn for the relationship that never could be, and also root for the relationship that actually occurred. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, I really enjoyed some of the darker and moodier elements in this one, and it's always a great time at the theater, but the stunts just couldn't stack up with Fallout. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, a completely soulless sequel for a star-in franchise well past their prime, until a final act so exhilarating that it pissed me off even more they didn't make that the entire movie. The Jewel Thief, a decently told documentary about one of the most interesting people that has ever lived. Barbie, a genuine miracle of a movie that is hilarious, bold, powerful, and fun. Oppenheimer, an intricately and meticulously crafted story that left me haunted and breathless. They Clone Tyrone, a copy of a copy of a copy of a good movie. Secret Invasion, one of the worst things I've seen all year, except for like one scene between Nick Fury and his new wife that left me absolutely floored. Talk to Me, I love the premise and I love the first act, but I think the rules of the world kind of fall apart, and I've reached my limit on the obvious grief horror subgenre, and I just couldn't get on board with the protagonist despite being a really strong lead performance. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, the fun and enthusiasm everyone involved in this has oozes off the screen. Nimona, it's rough around the edges, but it handles representation and darker themes better than any other mainstream animated movie I can think of in recent memory. Jackie Brown is Quentin Tarantino's most underrated film and an absolute masterpiece. Sympathy for the Devil, they let Nick go full cage in one scene, but unfortunately there are way more than one scene in this movie. Gran Turismo, one of the most generic by-the-number sports biopics I've ever seen, and yet the ending still kinda worked for me. The Hunted, a 60-year-old Tommy Lee Jones has one of the coolest knife fights you'll ever see on film in this movie. Thief, no one has ever looked cooler and sweatier than James Caan looks in this badass movie. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, an ensemble of incredible performances in a story that's equal parts funny, charming, moving, and deeply unsettling. Old Boy is a perfectly constructed movie with an all-timer of an ending. Lost in Translation, a vibes movie, but the vibes are good. Bottoms is really funny, but it also feels less like a polished movie and more like an assembly cut of the funniest improvisations. No One Will Save You, Caitlin Dever anchors a really well-crafted creature feature, but the gimmick of no one talking really strains after a while and turns into an actual hindrance. Theater Camp is really funny and ends with a genuinely great original musical number. The creator is an actual experiment to see how boring they can make a film with the coolest visuals possible. Fair Play I was super into until it faceplants hard into trashy Lifetime thriller territory in the final act. Saw X, I'm a fan of the Saw movies even when they're bad, and this one is actually good. The Fall of the House of Usher, it's like if they brutally murdered a different Roy sibling every episode of Succession. The Kane Mutiny Court Martial is the second best movie of 2023, featuring Jason Clarke annihilating people during a legal hearing. Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm definitely in the Molly should have been the lead camp of this one. No Hard Feelings, we really need more big studio comedies like this releasing in theaters. Anatomy of a Fall is an absolutely riveting exploration of what truth even really means, and an ode to the power of narrative and language. Jennifer's Body, Through the Trees is still a banger. A Haunting in Venice, there used to be a time where every year Adam Sandler would shoot a crappy movie in a fun vacation destination and bring along all of his C-list comedian friends to keep them employed. This franchise is like that for Kenneth Branagh, but instead of his friends, it's a comically large fake mustache. The Conference is a slasher with a great ensemble, but the most boring protagonist possible. Priscilla holds up a dirty rhinestone mirror to the complicated legacy of one of the world's biggest rock stars. Jawan is the best kind of over-the-top ridiculousness. With Naiad, if you take away the miscast lead, the generic script, the baffling directing choices, you're left with a really solid supporting turn from Jodie Foster. When Evil Lurks, an incredible opening, some excellent world building, and a brutal mean streak that completely collapses on itself in the second half. The Marvels is an over-edited, ugly mess from start to finish. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is an incredible companion piece to one of the most iconic television series of all time. The Holdovers is the most charming and heartwarming movie of the year. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is a surprisingly good YA Hitler origin story. In The Killer, David Fincher meticulously takes down, pulls apart, and satirizes his own myth as a filmmaker to extremely entertaining effect. Thanksgiving is a solid, right-down-the-middle slasher movie. In Next Goal Wins, the old Taika Waititi shows itself just enough times in the movie to give you hope that he can still make a comeback. Saltburn proves that movies can be both bad and entertaining. In Mike Birbiglia, The Old Man in the Pool, one of our great performers gives another great performance. In Master Gardener, the reserved elements are too reserved, the gonzo elements aren't gonzo enough, and the central metaphor is too on the nose. Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain, the most consistently funny people currently on SNL, made a movie that is as consistently funny as everything else currently on SNL. May December, wall-to-wall acting powerhouses, Dream Scenario taps into the fear of the world seeing you as you see yourself, and runs with that premise to some very funny, very weird, and very moving places. Leave the World Behind, a Netflix original about the importance of physical media. Thanks, Obama. Godzilla Minus One, a Godzilla movie really made me sob my eyes out in the movie theater. 12 Angry Men is a cinematic masterclass, but also this is not how jury deliberations work at all. Maestro, just as horny but half as good as Tar. Poor Things is an ode to the beauty of life, filled with some of the most unique and gorgeous visuals of the year. Wonka, I Hardly Know. And The Iron Claw. I don't think I've ever been more emotionally devastated in my life. And so that's it. That's every single movie I saw in 2023. If you want my thoughts in real time throughout the year on what I'm watching, you can follow me on Letterboxd at Josh D. Floyd. And if you want my in-depth thoughts on my top 10 films of the year, I've got a video of that as well. Thanks for watching this video. Bye.